Welcome to Leaving a Legacy, Navigating Estate Planning with Rose Harper Law.
Hello and welcome to Leaving a Legacy, Navigating Estate Planning with Rose Harper Law. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and as always, I am joined by the owner of Rose Harper Law, of course, Rose Harper. Rose, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy our conversations, so this will be great.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. I was just seeing, we're talking about estate planning for aging parents now. We kind of touched on some digital assets before, and we were discussing older people and what they might have ready, what they might not have ready. So this is a good segue discussion. I feel like, it's probably a hard question, but when is it the right time to talk with aging parents about their estate plan?
So ideally, the family conversation will begin before there's a crisis situation. So meaning like before someone becomes incapacitated. Ideally you'll start having conversations, when your parents are still healthy, they're still mentally sharp. That way they can fully participate in the planning process and make thoughtful decisions about their future and, also decisions about their legacy. Like this is their assets that they work their lifetime for, or even just being able to make their own medical directive decisions. We all deserve to, have that dignity as we pass and kind of make those choices. But if you fail to document what you actually would want to happen, before something happens and you become incapacitated, then, your family might not know. And then they're going to be in conflict, guessing what you would want. So, often I tell families estate planning isn't just, about preparing for the end. It's actually, protecting your quality of life and your independence along the way. So early conversations can really prevent confusion, legal complications, and family stress down the road. And, it's an act of love and respect to open up the dialogue sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, if I've learned anything from talking to you over these episodes, it's if you don't have a good plan, it doesn't affect you as much as it does the people you left behind, and that could cause a lot of headaches when people are trying to grieve.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, getting the plan into place, it gives you peace of mind now while you're still alive, but then it also really helps your family so that they know what you would want. You're providing a roadmap for them because otherwise they might not really know, and then they're gonna feel guilty if they maybe made the wrong decisions or they were unsure. You can alleviate all that stress.
Yeah, I don't want to be haunted because I made the wrong decision. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't need anybody coming back and haunting me. What are the key documents that you recommend every parent has in place as they get older?
Yeah, so there's definitely a few essential documents that, form a foundation of a strong estate plan for any aging parent. So that would include a last will and testament. That really directs how your assets are going to be distributed and also naming guardians if necessary. Then there's also a durable power of attorney. This helps to designate someone that you want to manage your financial and legal affairs if you become incapacitated. So those are the first two. Then there's also a healthcare proxy. Some people call it a medical power of attorney, but that appoints someone to be able to make medical decisions for you.
Mhm.
Then you have a living will or advance directives, and that actually documents what you want your medical power of attorney to do. So first you're giving them legal authority, but then you're also documenting what you actually want your end of life decisions to be. So you're telling them in advance, "Hey, I'm giving you the responsibility of this and this is what I want." And then also a HIPAA authorization. That way, trusted individuals can have access to your medical information if they need it for some reason. And, usually what I do is I walk my clients through all of these documents so that they really understand and feel empowered why they're getting this in place and what the benefit of it is, and that way their plan is comprehensive and it aligns with their values, their family dynamics, and of course actually will work for the legal standards.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If you're listening to us and not watching us, you missed Rose's thumbs up. Did you catch that? You did a thumbs up, and then the little icon came up on the screen. That was pretty
So
funny.
funny that that
I
happens now.
know, I know, that cracked me up. All right. Anyway, back to the real discussion here. So maybe back to what we started with. What advice would you give to adult children on how best to start the conversation, without causing any family tension? Because it obviously is it shouldn't be, but it is a weird conversation to have. So what do you recommend from your experience?
Yeah, as best you can, like, when you want to start this conversation with your family, approach it with empathy and respect. The conversation, it shouldn't be a demand like, I want you to get this in place, save me the hassle.
Or even like, I want to know what I'm getting,
Oh,
like
yeah,
that kind of a thing. Yeah.
yeah. Hopefully, it's not that too.
Maybe
Um,
don't lead with that. Okay.
yeah, don't lead with
Mental
that.
note. I'm gonna write that down. Don't lead with that. All right.
But definitely approach it like, this is a gesture of you actually caring, about your parents. And, you just want to make sure that you're prepared because if something unexpected happens, you want to actually honor them. You want to honor their wishes. And in order to do that, it's important to have these conversations and then actually document, what they want to honor their wishes. So usually, you want to think about like a quiet, not stressful time, probably not when the entire extended family is around for a holiday. Um,
All right. Merry Christmas, everyone. Now I got something to say.
yeah, yeah, huge announcement. But and then you can also approach it like if you're doing it for yourself, like if you're doing your own estate plan for your family because you have young children and you're concerned, you want to document, if something happens to who you want to raise your kids.
Mhm.
And that's a way to bring it up to your parents. Like, hey, I'm getting this done because I want to make sure that I give legal authority to people to raise my kids if something happens to me. And I wanted to make sure that you have something in place for you. You don't have to tell me what it is, but do you have your will, or was it last done 30 years ago when I was
Mhm.
a baby? That's a way to open up the conversation. And, oftentimes I'll have intergenerational meetings. So sometimes I have the adult children and the parents, just to give them like information. And then obviously, whoever ends up wanting to get their estate plan done, I meet with them individually, separately. But at least for just gathering information, like what is a will? What is a trust?
Mhm.
Those are pretty neutral conversations. They don't get into specifics, but sometimes having a professional present like myself, an estate planning attorney, it can kind of bring a lot of clarity and it provides that third party perspective. I meet with so many families with so many different unique situations, and there's really nothing to be ashamed of. Whatever the family dynamic is or the level of assets, you still deserve to have your wishes be known and document them.
Mhm. Yeah, those are great tips. Actually, those are really good tips because that is not the easiest thing to bring up. But yeah, no, that was really good. What kind of mistakes do you see in estate plans for older adults?
One of the biggest mistakes is that their plan is outdated. So,
Mhm.
the people they chose to do things for them have already predeceased them. They're not even alive anymore. So, that's not effective. Or they have incomplete documents. Maybe they thought they got a trust, but they really only have a will. Um, basically the documents were done, decades ago. They don't even know where they're located. You can't find your documents. "Oh, I know I did it, but I don't know where it is." Well, that's not gonna help anyone.
Yeah.
Um, and then, also another mistake when people try to do things online, they'll just maybe they'll name someone, say that, "Okay, well, I'm gonna put my firstborn child as my executor or, my agent." But your firstborn child is, like, in the military and they're serving in Iraq and, so you have another child who lives 30 minutes from you and is, available and able to do it. A lot of people just don't think they just think of like lineage versus like
Yep.
considering proximity, availability, capacity to serve in these roles.
Yeah.
Um, So those are all things that I go through with my clients to really think through, who are you choosing and does this actually make sense for their life too? And then a lot of times, like, plans fail to address kind of what we talked about earlier, the digital assets, long-term care needs, or blended family dynamics. Blended families is a huge one. If you've had multiple marriages, maybe children from multiple marriages, you really want to make sure that if your goal is to have your family united, your children united, even after you pass, then you need to plan a certain way that, everyone is accounted for, and, that you're honoring the entire family, and, not just focusing on, one or two children, unless unless that's your goal, right?
Right,
So you
right, right.
you can specifically disinherit people if there's a
Sure.
problem or something, but if that's not your goal, and you have a blended family, then you might need to consider, well, I actually don't want my children from my first marriage to have the burden of taking care of, my ex-wife or something. So maybe I actually do want to, provide for them to relieve that stress from my children.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things that you can do, or making sure you give a direct distribution right away to older children, so they're not waiting on the youngest one to get to a certain age to receive their inheritance or things like that. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, definitely taking the time to review your plans, making sure there's no gaps in your plan, and that your estate plan is comprehensive and actually reflects your current situation.
Yeah, my dad is a DIY kinda guy, and he did his online, and I'm terrified to know what's in there.
Oh, no.
I know.
The thing is, like, actually, I've been hearing that a lot of, judges have been rejecting, like, the
Yeah.
DIY wills and stuff that are done online, so, I don't know.
I know, I need to talk to him about that because, yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that exact same thing where I actually have a friend who had that is going through that very thing, that I think they did end up accepting it, but it was not easy.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna play this for my dad.
Yeah.
How should families approach organizing things like financial, insurance, and online account information? We kinda touched on this a little bit, but, can you kinda go over that again?
Yeah, definitely. So, when you get organized, you're giving a really amazing gift to your family. And
Mhm.
that's something that I help my clients do as a part of their estate planning process. So, creating that master document, we call it a financial wealth inventory, but, basically creating this playbook that, lists out your bank accounts, your investments, your insurance policies, pensions, retirement plans, login information, and account information, contact people. So, like, if you have a financial advisor, someone that you go to for all of your medical or your legal matters, you would want to list all those people, because, that way your family knows who to turn to in certain situations. And we definitely help our clients, create that system in place for themselves and their family, so that when the time comes, their family's not scrambling. It can just relieve that stress. Like, actually, it's all together and it's all here for you. And, it brings a big peace of mind to both the person doing their planning, but also their family.
Can you talk about exactly what a healthcare proxy is and how that works as far as medical decisions, long-term care decisions, stuff like that?
Definitely, yeah. A healthcare proxy is someone, that is gonna be making medical decisions for you if you're unable to. So it's a very powerful role,
Mhm.
and it's crucial that the person appointed to that role understands your values, your wishes, your spiritual and cultural considerations. Adult children, also need to understand, like, what are your wishes in terms of remaining in home, assisted living, nursing, nursing care. This can be really complex and expensive, and it's something that everyone should really be talking about together to create a family plan. And early planning can help preserve your assets while ensuring that you have a good quality of life later on, and avoid that emergency decision making, that I had mentioned earlier. So definitely talking through options, whether it's, Medicaid planning or long-term care insurance, but getting your estate plan done as early as possible really helps you to start start thinking about those things and looking into them. Maybe you want to look into long-term care insurance, but you realize, actually, it doesn't make sense financially. We need Medicaid planning. Okay, then that's how you'll move forward. But at least when you start the process, you can start talking through these things. But certainly the healthcare proxy, incredibly important role. The other thing that I discuss with my clients is you should not just name someone without talking to them about it. I've had
Yeah.
I've had multiple people who
Whoa. Yeah.
assumed that their spouse, would be their healthcare proxy. Come to find out the spouse actually felt like they would be too distraught and didn't
Mhm.
wanna have to take on that responsibility. And
Mhm.
they just wanted to focus on the children if that was the situation, which is understandable, but you don't realize that, you're just thinking, "Oh, well, my spouse is gonna do it." Well,
Yeah. Makes
you know
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so having those conversations is really important.
No doubt. How do you advise families to avoid conflict, when siblings are involved in helping parents plan? If you have multiple, kids involved, what's the best way to keep it conflict free?
Definitely transparency and communication are key. It's the best when you can speak directly with your family, that you are honest about what your wishes are, you explain your decisions. That can reduce speculation and resentment. If your family knows, like, no, this was thoughtfully put together, this is what they want, this is what my
Mhm.
family member wants. And whenever possible, including people in your estate planning process to have those conversations can really help you gain clarity, like we talked about with the healthcare proxy. Like, if you don't even mention it, then you're not gonna know that the person you chose, like, is freaked out by that responsibility
Yeah,
and,
can't handle it
Mhm.
emotionally. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's heavy. It's heavy.
Yes, and, just making sure that people understand their roles, that everything's clearly defined, and that they know that they're gonna be called upon to help you in certain situations. So, I try to remind people estate planning is not just about the money, it's about your relationships, and with the right guidance, you can preserve both your money and your relationships.
Great advice as always. Thanks for that. And thank you for tuning in to Leaving a Legacy Navigating Estate Planning with Rose Harper Law. To connect with Rose and her team, head to roseharperlaw.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review. We love having you here. Rose, I loved chatting with you as always. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.